Okay, so we will start with Module 3, Unit 3, about holders. When we talk about holders, who are these holders are we referring to? Where we are actually referring to what we call as a holder in general, a holder simply, a holder in due course, a holder not in due course, and that also includes a holder for value. Holder in general or holder simply is any person who is in possession of that instrument. Holder for value is obviously any person who has given valuable consideration in that instrument. A holder not in due course is one who was able to meet the requirements in your section 52. Holder not in due course if you did not meet all those requirements. But really the question is, who is a holder in due course? Who is a holder in due course? How about if the situation is like this? Mike made the promissory note. He thereafter issued that to Peter or order. And then Peter, he negotiated that to Ami, Ami to Ben, and then Ben to Charlie, Charlie to Dar, Dar to Emily. So yan yung mga parties natin sa instrument. In this particular case here, who do you think is considered a holder in due course? Are we referring that only to Emily? She being the possessor, the actual physical possessor of that instrument? Well, the answer is no. Why? Because under Section 59, there is actually a presumption created that every holder of the instrument is deemed prima facie a holder for a holder in due course. In other words, in this particular case, it is not only Emily who should be considered a holder in due course. Rather, we should also consider Peter, Ami, Ben, Charlie, and Dar as holders in due course. Do not include Mike. Mike being the person who issued that. He's a maker. Okay, so Peter, Ami, Ben, Charlie, Dar, and Emily are all presumed holders in due course. How about if here comes X, for example, and X is claiming that Emily is a holder not in due course. So X is claiming, Emily, you are a holder not in due course. In that particular scenario, is Emily required to present evidence that she is indeed a holder in due course? How about if X would also claim, oh, Ami, you are a holder not in due course? Is Ami also required to present evidence that she is or she was a holder in due course? The answer is no. Why? Because the claim of X is a mere allegation, and mere allegation of X is not enough to overcome that disputable presumption of being a holder in due course. Remember, prima facie means it is an evidence sufficient to support a conclusion in the meantime, unless proven otherwise. Proven otherwise. Allegations are not evidence. Presumptions are not evidence. No, sorry. Allegations are not evidence. Allegation is not sufficient to overcome the presumption of being a holder in due course. So the mere contention or the mere claim of X that Emily is a holder not in due course, that Ami is a holder not in due course is not enough to overcome the presumption in their favor that they are holders in due course. So they are not required to present evidence to contradict the claim of X. But how about if X now was able to present evidence, okay, that Emily is a holder not in due course because she became a holder of the instrument after the due date. Okay? Yun ang reason pala niya eh. At the time you receive the instrument's already mature. One of the requirements to be considered a holder in due course is that you should have received the instrument before maturity. And in that case, you failed to receive it before the due date. So, you are a holder not in due course. In other words, X was now able to adduce evidence that indeed Emily is a holder not in due course. That evidence presented by X is now enough to overcome that presumption that Emily is a holder in due course. So in that particular scenario, is it already necessary on the part of Emily to likewise present evidence that really she received the instrument before the due date? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. In that particular scenario, considering that X was now able to present evidence, he was able to present proof that at the time Emily received the instrument, she received it after the due date. So yung presumption that Emily is a holder not in due course is no longer applicable. If Emily wants to be treated as a holder in due course, then she must present evidence that she is a holder in due course. Okay? Now, how about if the situation is like this? How about if what was shown or proven by X as a holder not in due course is actually Ben? Okay? So si Ben pala yung na-prove niya na hindi holder in due course. So Ben was proven as a holder not in due course. Okay? So Ben was proven by X that he is a holder not in due course. Okay? After Ben was shown to be a holder not in due course. So, Ben here, so Ben here was shown to be a holder not in due course. So, not in due course siya. After it was shown that Ben is a holder not in due course, he thereafter negotiated that instrument to Charlie. Charlie to Dar, Dar to Emily. Okay? Nauna na na-prove na si Ben ay holder not in due course before he actually negotiated that instrument to Charlie, Dar, and Emily. In this particular case, is it necessary on the part of Charlie, Dar, and Emily to prove that at the time they receive the instrument, they are holders in due course? Or will the presumption found in Section 59 that every holder is presumed a holder in due course applicable to Charlie, Dar, and Emily, parties, after it was shown that Ben is a holder not in due course? Considering that Ben negotiated that instrument to Charlie after it was shown that he's a holder not in due course, and Charlie negotiated that to Dar, Dar to Emily after it was shown that a prior party is a holder not in due course, then they will no longer enjoy the presumption of being a holder in due course. If they want to be considered and treated as holders in due course, then they should now present evidence that at the time they received the instrument, they were able to meet the requirements under Section 52. Okay? Because at the time they receive it, it was already shown that a prior party is a holder not in due course. How about Ami and Peter? Prior parties to Ben. Are they required to adduce evidence that they were also holders in due course? The answer is no. Prior parties will still continue to enjoy the presumption of being a holder in due course. Yung mga subsequent parties lang ang hindi na mag-enjoy ng presumption. Okay? But how about if Ben, before he negotiated that instrument to Charlie, Charlie to Dar, Dar to Emily, it is not yet shown that he is a holder not in due course. in which case Charlie, Darren, Emily will enjoy the presumption of being a holder in due course. Kung nauna yung negotiation bago yung presentation ng proof that Ben is a holder not in due course, then Charlie, Darren, Emily will enjoy the presumption of being a holder in due course. Pero sa example natin kasi, sinabi ko, nauna na. Okay? It was already earlier shown that Ben is a holder not in due course before he negotiated that instrument to Charlie, Darren, Emily. That's the reason why Charlie, Darren, Emily, parties subsequent to Ben, holder not in due course, will no longer enjoy the presumption of being a holder in due course. If they want to be considered and treated as a holder in due course, they should now adduce evidence that they were able to meet the requirements under Section 52, the requirements of being a holder in due course. So, tingnan natin yung sagot dito. Who is a holder in due course? Section 59. Section 59 states that every holder is deemed prima facie to be a holder in due course. But if it is shown that the title of any person who has negotiated the instrument is defective, the burden is now on the holder to prove that he or some person under whom he claims acquired the title is a holder in due course. But this rule does not apply in favor of a party who became bound on the instrument prior to the acquisition of such defective title. So just like in our example a while ago, Peter and Ami, they are no longer required to present evidence that they were holders in due course because they were parties prior to Ben, who has a defective title. Pero parties after Ben, okay, who became parties only after it was shown that Ben is a holder, not in due course, they will not enjoy the presumption. They have to present evidence that indeed they are holders in due course. So question now here is, when is a holder of a negotiable instrument considered a holder in due course? You are a holder in due course if you were able to meet all these four requirements found in your section 54. Actually, 52. These requirements here, parang checklist lang yan. If all these requirements are present, then there is no reason why you will still be considered a holder not in due course. But if you will miss any of these requirements, then that's the time that you will be regarded as a holder not in due course. So let's consider one by one. What are those requirements to be considered a holder in due course? First, that the instrument is complete and regular upon its face. What's the meaning of that? It is complete because the instrument must be a mechanically complete instrument. Mechanically complete, there is a date, there is an amount, it has been signed, okay? There is no entries that were left blank. That's a mechanically complete instrument. And then regular on its face, that on its face, there is nothing which will cast doubt as to the validity, the integrity, the negotiability of that instrument. Take, for example, there are insertions, but they were not countersigned. There were erasures, but they were not countersigned. Though the instrument is considered complete, it's no longer considered as regular on its face. Because basic is the rule that if there are other erasures or there are insertions or intercalations in the instrument, you have to countersign it to prove that you are really the one who made those insertions and intercalations. Yeah? So if you did not do that, then even if the instrument is materially complete, that instrument is not regular in space, in which case you are still considered a holder not in due course. Next one, that he became a holder of the instrument before it was overdue and without notice that it has been previously dishonored if such was the fact. One of the requirements to be considered a holder in due course is that you should have received the instrument before maturity. That's why in our example a while ago, the reason which was forwarded by X in claiming that Emily is a holder not in due course is that X claimed that Emily received the instrument after the due date because the second requirement to be considered a holder in due course is that you should have received the instrument before it is overdue, before its maturity. Okay. Another one is that without notice that the instrument has been previously dishonored. So dishonored by non-acceptance or dishonored by non-payment. You have no notice about those so that you can still be regarded and considered a holder in due course. How about the third one? That he took it in good faith and for value. Remember, is it necessary to prove that you were in good faith? Good faith is a state of mind. Good faith is presumed. In other words, he who alleges bad faith on your part has the burden of proving that indeed you were in bad faith. Okay? Because good faith is always presumed. And for value, that he took it for value. Ibig sabihin that you are also a holder for value, that you have given valuable consideration in that instrument. That's the reason why I have been saying before that if you are a holder for value, it does not necessarily mean that you are a holder in due course. But if you are a holder in due course, it already follows that you are a holder for value, because one of the requirements to be considered a holder in due course is that you have to be a holder for value. Another one is that at the time it was negotiated to him, he had no notice of any infirmity in the instrument or defect in the title of the person negotiating it. The notice of infirmity, the notice of defect being referred to here are actually personal knowledge of that defect, actual knowledge of that defect. Sir, halimbawa po, at the time na tinanggap ko yung instrument, merong chismis na yung pinagkukunan ko, defective yung title niya. Will I already be disqualified from becoming a holder in due course? Well, sabi ko, the notice is tantamount to actual knowledge or personal knowledge of that defect. If it is just a mere gossip, sabi-sabi lang, kwento-kwento lang, chismis lang yan, that will not disqualify you of becoming a holder in due course. That is not the notice which will disqualify you from becoming a holder in due course. So ano kaya yung tinatawag nila na infirmity in the instrument? Halimbawa, there is material alteration there. There is forgery in the instrument. Those are infirmity in the instrument. Okay? There were insertions in the instrument which are not obvious. Then in that case, that's considered as an infirmity in the instrument. Ano naman yung defect in the title of the person negotiating it? The title of a person is considered to be defective if he acquired it using the so-called vices of consent. Maalala nyo ba yon? In your obligations and contracts. If you have obtained it using fraud, using violence, using intimidation, using undue influence in order to obtain that title, then your title is said to be a defective title. If you have no notice that the person who is giving that instrument to you obtained the instrument using fraud, using violence, using intimidation, then you are still considered and qualified as a holder in due course. Kasi nga, yung sinasabi natin dito na notice should be understood as personal knowledge, as actual knowledge of that infirmity, of that defect in the title of the person negotiating it. Okay? Going on further. Who is a holder for value? Ay, napag-usapan na natin yan noon, that a holder for value is one who has given valuable consideration on the instrument, and he is a holder for value not only to the person who actually received the consideration, but also to all prior parties prior to the delivery of that valuable consideration. And it follows that if you're a holder for value, you are also a holder in due course. Okay, so let's take a look at this illustration. Mike made a promissory note. He issued that to Peter or order. Peter later on negotiated that to Alpha, Alpha to Bert, Bert to Charlie, Charlie to Danny, and later on to Fanny, the present holder of the instrument. Okay, so we will now work on these following assumptions. That Peter, Alpha, Bert, Charlie, and Danny. So Peter, Alpha, Bert, Charlie, and Danny, sila yung lima. Okay, did not give any valuable consideration at the time they received the instrument. So, Peter, Alpha, Bert, Charlie, and Danny are holders not in due course. So, if they are holders not in due course and it's shown that they did not really give valuable consideration at the time they negotiated or the time they received the instrument, then they are not qualified, they are not considered holder in due course. But, if Fanny gave valuable consideration to that instrument, then ano yung kwan natin? Who is a considered now holder for value? it is only Fanny because Fanny was the only one who gave the valuable consideration. Insofar as Peter, Alpha, Bert, Charlie, and Danny, they are not holders for value. They are not also holders in due course. Another question to be considered. To whom is Fanny considered a holder for value? Ha? Yung consideration, tinanggap lang ni Danny. So to whom is he considered a holder for value? Well, sabi natin, Fanny is a holder for value insofar as Mike, Peter, Alpha, Bert, Charlie, and Danny. Okay? So he's a holder for value not only insofar as Danny, the person who actually received it, but also to all prior parties. Okay? Before the delivery of the valuable consideration. So in this situation, Fanny is a holder for value not only to Danny, but also to Mike, Peter, Alpha, Bert, and Charlie. Going on further, what are the rights of a holder in general? This also includes the rights of a holder not in due course, a holder simply, or a holder for value who is a holder not in due course. So there are two basic rights of a holder in general: to sue in his own name, and the other one is to receive payment. To receive payment, to be paid. That is his right, even is a holder not in due course. And if he will not be paid, then he can bring an action for the enforcement of his right to be paid. But if you are a holder in due course, what will be your rights? You have the right to sue in your name in addition to those two. In addition to your right to receive payment, you also have the right to hold the instrument free from any defect of title of prior parties, to hold the instrument free from defenses available to prior parties themselves. And the last one is to enforce payment of the instrument for the full amount thereof against all prior parties. Before we'll consider C and D, the right of a holder in due course is to receive payment. But if you're going to take a look at the last right, to enforce payment of the instrument for the full amount thereof, you notice that a holder in due course is entitled not just to receive a payment, but to receive full payment of that instrument. Unlike if you are a holder not in due course, your right is simply the right to receive payment. Does not make any qualification whether full payment or not full payment. But if you are a whole holder in due course, your right to receive payment is full payment. To enforce payment for the full amount thereof against all parties liable in the instrument. So that is the distinction insofar as the right of a holder not in due course to be paid and the right of a holder in due course to be paid. If you're a holder in due course, full payment. Not in due course, right to be paid. Full payment man yan or partial payment does not matter because your right is just to be paid. Now, let's take a look at this third and fourth right of a holder in due course. To hold the instrument free from any defect of title of prior parties. Okay, so let's take a look at this. How about if, erase muna natin yan. How about if Mike, again, made a promissory note addressed to Peter or order, and then Peter negotiated that to Ami, and Ami, while in the possession of Ami, so while in the possession of Ami, it was obtained by Ben, okay, through fraud. So parang Ami, later on, it was transferred to Ben because of fraud. Okay? And then Ben to Charlie, who is a holder in due course. Okay? So in this case, what is the right of Charlie here, who is a holder in due course? Besides the right to receive payment, besides the right to sue, okay, to receive full payment, to sue, what else? To hold that instrument free from defects of title of prior parties. The title of Ben here is defective. It is a defective title because Ben obtained that because of fraud. Diba? Sabi natin kanina that defect of title refers to acquisition of title because of vices of consent, because of fraud, violence, threat, intimidation, etc. And in this particular situation, Ben obtained his title from Ami through fraud. So it follows that Ben's title is defective. So when Ben negotiated that to Charlie, will the defect in the title of Ben be carried insofar as Charlie is concerned? The answer is no. Because if you are a holder in due course, it is your right to hold that instrument free from defects, any defect of title of prior parties. In other words, if you are a holder in due course, it is as if you are in the concept of Johari window. I do not know if you know what is that Johari window. Clean slate. So even if that there is a defect in the title, there is a defect in that instrument, you are holding that instrument free from any defect. Even if the title of Ben is defective because you obtained that because of fraud, it is as if you are holding that instrument free from that defect of title of Ben. You have clean slate. Malinis yung document, yung instrumento na hinahawakan mo. Okay? Now, how about the fourth right? To hold that instrument free from personal defenses. I want you to take note of that. If you are a holder in due course, it is not free from any defense. Wrong. It is only free from personal defenses available to prior parties among themselves. Why is that? Because a holder in due course can only hold that instrument free from personal defenses and not from real defense. Because real defense is a defense which can be invoked against any holder, whether a holder in due course or a holder not in due course. So let's review what we have discussed before about personal and real defense. Okay? Recall lang natin. When we say personal defense, it is valid against a holder not in due course. Okay? But if it is a real defense, it is against valid against any holder. So it does not matter whether you are a holder in due course or a holder not in due course. That would still be a valid defense against you. Okay? So if that is if you that is sorry. Okay, sorry for that. So real defense, it is a valid defense against any holder. So whether you are holder in due course or a holder not in due course. Okay? So yun yung rule natin dyan. Now, how about if this is what happened? How about if let's go back to doon sa slides natin. May example yata doon. Okay. Free from personal defenses. Ito yung sinasabi natin. Okay, to hold that instrument free from personal defenses only does not include real defense because that real defense is a valid defense against any holder and it does not matter whether you're holder in due course or holder not in due course. So let's take a look at these illustrations. Mike made a promissory note addressed to Peter or order, Peter to Alpha, Alpha to Bert, Bert to Charlie, Charlie to Danny. And then what are the assumptions that we will consider in this case? That alpha changed the value. Okay, so alpha here changed the value of the instrument from 1 million to 11 million pesos without any permission or authority. So, in that case, there is now what we call as material alteration. And how will you consider material alteration as a defense? Material alteration as a defense is considered as a personal defense. Okay? So, since material alteration is a personal defense, and that Danny is a holder in due course, hmm, can Mike or Peter refuse to pay Danny for the mere reason that there has been material alteration in the instrument? Remember, it was Alpha who changed the consideration from 1 million to 11 million pesos. And then Danny here is a holder in due course. So if ever Danny will go to Mike and demand payment from Mike, or if Danny will go to Peter and demand payment from Peter, can Mike and Peter parties before Alpha, the one who is responsible for that material alteration? Okay? So, if Danny will go to Mike and Peter to enforce payment of the instrument, can they refuse to pay Danny on the ground that there has been material alteration in the instrument? Is that a valid reason against Danny? The answer is no. Why? Because Danny, being a holder in due course, will now hold that instrument free from personal defense, free from the defense of material alteration. Because insofar as Danny is concerned, he being a holder in due course, that kind of defense cannot be validly raised against him. Okay? But how about if, in this illustration number 2, Mike again made a promissory note addressed to Peter, Peter to Alpha, Alpha to Bert, Bert to Charlie, Charlie to Danny. And then it was again Alpha who now forged the signature of, the signature of Alpha was forged by a third person in, uh, in the name of Fanny. Okay? So siya pala yung nag-forge, si Fanny. Okay? So si Alpha ngayon ang victim. So Alpha's signature was forged by Fanny. And we all know that forgery is considered a real defense. So, ang tanong, Danny is a holder in due course. That's also another assumption. Okay? If ever Danny will go to Mike and Peter, parties before the forgery, okay, since it was the signature of Alpha which was forged, can Mike and Peter refuse to pay Danny on the ground that the signature of Alpha, parties after them, has been forged? The answer is yes. Why? Because take note, this is a payable to order instrument. And as we have said before, if you are a party before the forgery in a payable to order instrument, you cannot be held liable. Insofar as Mike and Peter are concerned, they have a valid defense against Danny, even if Danny is a holder in due course. Their defense here is the defense of forgery. And even if Danny is a holder in due course, they can validly raise that defense because that defense now is a personal defense. A holder in due course simply holds the instrument free from personal defenses. It does not include real defense. And since forgery is a real defense, that is not a valid defense that can be raised against Danny. That is a valid defense, I should say. That is a valid defense that can be raised by Mike and Peter against Danny. Unlike dun sa first example natin, which is just material alteration, it is just a personal defense which they cannot validly raise as a defense. So in this particular case, I want you to I want you to take note of the different instances whereby there is a personal defense or a real defense. Maalala nyo pa rin naman siguro yung Section 15 ninyo, incomplete and undelivered, that is a real defense. Or yung tinatawag natin na complete but undelivered instrument, that is a personal defense. Or an incomplete but delivered instrument, that is again a personal defense. If it is a personal defense, you cannot raise that against a holder in due course. But if it is now a real defense, that is now a valid defense against a holder in due course because it can be raised against any holder. Okay? Uh, Now, dito sa kuha na to, 'di ba yung signature ni Alpha ang na-forge? Okay, review lang doon sa section 23 ninyo. How about if Danny will go to Bert and Charlie to demand payment? Can they also raise the defense that the signature of Alpha was forged? The answer is no, because endorsers cannot raise the defense of forgery because of their warranties found in 65 and 66. Ano yung warranty nila doon? Paragraph A, that the instrument is genuine and in all respect what it purports to be. In other words, Bert and Charlie, when they negotiated that instrument, they already warranted, they already admitted that the instrument is free from any forgeries because they guaranteed that the instrument is a genuine instrument, and in all respect of that instrument, that is a genuine instrument. So you are practically waiving the defense of forgery, okay, in that particular case. That's why forgery cannot be raised by Bert and Charlie as a defense insofar as Danny is concerned. Going on further, ito na yung panghuli, derivative holder in due course. Well, you cannot find the term derivative holder in due course. Wala yan. I just coined this term, derivative holder. Why did I make use of the term derivative holder in due course? Because in this case, this person that I am referring to is really a person who is a holder not in due course. Okay? He is a holder not in due course. But since he derives his title, who obtains his title from a holder in due course, then he will be exercising the same rights as if he's a holder in due course. So tingnan natin. Sabi niya dito, in the hands of any holder other than a holder in due course, a negotiable instrument is subject to the same defenses as if it were non-negotiable. But a holder who derives his title through a holder in due course and who is not himself a party to any fraud or illegality affecting the instrument, his rights will be the same as the rights of a holder in due course with respect to all parties prior to such holder in due course. So, uulitin ko yung pinag-uusapan natin dito is really a holder not in due course. He did not meet the requirements under Section 52. However, instead of exercising only two rights, the right to receive payment and then the right to sue, he will be granted the same rights as if he's a holder in due course. So instead of having just two rights, he will have 5 rights. Okay? Now, to be qualified as a derivative holder in due course, firstly, holder not in due course ka, syempre. Pangalawa, you should not be a party in causing any defect in the instrument. Because if you have been a party in causing such defect, then you will now be disqualified from becoming a derivative holder in due course. Okay, so to illustrate, Mike to Peter or order, and then Peter negotiated that to Alpha. Alpha here is a holder in due course. Then Alpha negotiated that again to Bert, who is again a holder in due course. And then Bert negotiated that to Charlie, who is now a holder not in due course. So, technically, Alpha and Bert, they will have 5 rights because they are holders in due course. And Charlie, being a holder not in due course, technically, he will only be allowed to exercise 2 rights, the right to sue and then the right to receive payment, correct? Now, how about if Charlie here, who is a holder not in due course, did not participate in causing any defect in the instrument? Okay? He is not a party to any fraud or illegality in that instrument. Then in that particular case, Charlie's right will be the same as the right of Bert, holder in due course. So whatever is the right of Bert in that instrument will now be transferred in favor of Charlie. So if Bert will have 5 rights, it follows that Charlie will also have 5 rights. He will have the right to sue. He will have the right to receive payment or full payment at that. He will also have the right to hold that instrument free from any defects of title, holds that instrument free from any personal defenses available to prior parties among themselves. That will now be the right of Charlie. So if ever Charlie will go to Mike, pwede ba niyang sabihin na, I refuse to pay because there is a defect in the title. There is a personal defense valid against you. No, that cannot be raised against Charlie because Charlie here is as if a holder in due course. The right of Charlie is similar to the right of Bert. That's why Mike cannot raise such defense. Peter too cannot raise such defense. Alpha too cannot raise that defense. Why? Because the rights of Charlie is the same as the rights of Bert insofar as parties after birth such as Alpha, Peter, and Mike. So sabi niya dito, has all the rights of such former holder, we're referring to birth, in respect to all parties prior to the latter. In respect to all parties prior to birth. So sina Mike, Peter, and Alpha. Okay? What are the rights of Charlie in the instrument, if any? Well, even if Charlie is a holder not in due course, his rights are the same as the rights of a holder in due course. It's the same as the rights of birth because he received the instrument from birth who is a holder in due course. And there is no showing here that Charlie is a party to such fraud or illegality. But how about if, dagdagan lang natin to, how about if Charlie later on negotiated that instrument to Dar? So nalipat na dito kay Dar. And Dar here is a holder in due course, not in due course, not in due course. What will be the rights of Dar? Kapareho pa rin ba nung rights ni Charlie na to sue, to receive payment, to receive the instrument free from any defects of title, free from personal defenses? Ganun pa rin ba? The answer is no more. Because Dar is no longer considered a derivative holder in due course. Firstly, because he did not receive the instrument from a holder in due course. Rather, he received it from a person who is a holder not in due course. Okay? Okay, so that's the end of our discussion on rights of holders.